that's an uphill battle, right? Because there are people who, you've read it, you've heard it. I'm gonna let you in on a couple secrets. Number one, they said the same thing about Chris's generation. They said the same thing about my generation.
I thought we were the same generation.
Yeah, I just was using you as a point of reference. We are the same generation. They said all those same things about us. And so your responsibility is you've got to disrupt that conversation. Because I have been teaching you guys or working with you for 7 years now. And I am super hopeful about the future, having you guys driving the bus. Because I love the fact that they also say that you're too reliant on technology. What's wrong with that, right? We're doing nothing but innovating and creating new technology. Somebody's got to be proficient at it. So it's you guys. The communication skills piece, people are jealous of where you're at. And so when people are jealous, they tend to lash out and say these things. Another thing I'd like to do is I'd like to apologize on behalf of my generation, who we may have raised you. And so we did some things that maybe kind of set some of that stuff in motion. You know, we gave you cell phones when you were 10, 11. We made sure you got participation awards and trophies because, you know, actually you were acting on our behalf. And so we were living vicariously through you. We couldn't win the trophy, but we wanted you to do it for us. And we solved a lot of your problems too. We didn't give you a chance to solve your own problems. We did that for you. So those are, you know, that's where some of that stuff comes from. And so again, your responsibility is to disrupt that thinking and show people that that's not the case. And there's very easy ways you can do it, especially in this business, right? That means you can volunteer for shifts, you show up to work early, you're not rushing out the door. When there's meetings and events that are not mandatory, they should become mandatory to you. Because the people who are leading, whether it's a restaurant or a hotel or a corporation, they're looking at the people, they're looking for the people who do these things, who actually are demonstrating that they want to be there and that they've got an intentional, authentic interest in the work and building a career. Our business is filled with jobs, but it's also filled with opportunities to learn and to grow. And it's up to you guys to take that, right? To take those steps. So it was about, we're gonna rewind a little bit, and I think I was maybe 14 or 15. Do they still do parent-teacher nights, right? Where your parents go up to the schools and talk to your teachers? So, you know, my folks went up, and when they came home, I was sitting on the couch, and as usual, my dad hit me in the back of the head and said, "Hey, jackass, I need to talk to you." And I said, "What?" Because I thought it was going to be a good report. He said, "Well, your teachers told us 2 things about you. They said, number 1, you're popular." And he looked at me and he said, "You know, an orangutan can be popular." And then he said, "They all said you have a lot of potential." And he said, "Let me just get this straight with you right now." And my dad's a nice man. He just felt sometimes he had to share something with me. And he said, "You know what potential means?" I said, "I think I have an idea." And he said, "Well, let me tell you what potential means to me. It means that you ain't worth a shit to me right now." Okay? So I am sure that somebody in your life has said or will say that you've got potential. Anybody told you you have potential? Yeah, right? You all are just don't want to raise your hand. I know somebody has told you you have potential. So when people would tell me I had potential, I would say, "Oh, thank you. Thank you." That's not really the right response. The right response is, "What do you mean?
what can I do to further realize my potential? Because obviously, if somebody's saying that to you, they recognize the potential in you. You can't recognize your own potential. What you can recognize in you is your ambition, what you want to do, but when the next time somebody tells you you have potential, you need to ask them, tell me what you mean, and tell me how I can realize or further this potential right now. What are some things that I can do? I never said that to anybody. And I'm also here to tell you that when you're in your 40s and 50s, nobody is telling you you have potential anymore, right? So you have to take advantage of that, because if it hasn't happened, it's going to happen. And I lived a long time on the fact that I had potential. I've been told I have potential. And I was just walking around a potential something. But I didn't do anything about it. So that's going to happen to you. And you need to do that. And that's very important. That's really important. So I kicked around in New York. And after a couple of years at the Marriott Marquis, they transferred me to Chicago. And I went to work for a hotel in Chicago, the Marriott in Schaumburg, Illinois. And I got a little disenchanted because I was used to 1,600 rooms, and this was 400 rooms, and it just didn't have the go-go pace I was used to. Plus, I was a diehard New Yorker, and so I didn't think there was anything really west of the Hudson River to begin with. And Chicago, they had the time change, the central time zone like here. I was like, what do you mean the news comes on at 10 o'clock? What is that all about? And they moved slower than they did in New York, and I was impatient. Anybody here stare at the microwave when it's cooking? Come on, 30 seconds! I want my hot dog now! Yeah, so I was impatient, and I still can be. And so I said, you know what, I've now learned a lot about hotel operations because I've been a manager on duty, a night manager, I've done night audits, I worked at the front office. And so, that was one of the things when I was in sales. I said, I'm selling things that I really don't know how they work. And so part of wanting to get into operations was because I wanted to be a salesman who could appreciate the operations and not make promises that the hotel staff, the rest of the hotel couldn't fulfill. And so I wanted to get back into sales. And it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. But I did find somebody who was willing to give me a chance in sales again. And it was an independent hotel in Chicago. And what I learned was that we were selling rooms to people who were going to be staying 5 nights or longer. And this was this was about 89 or 90. And that was the early days of extended stay business. An extended stay business is they're hotels, purpose-built hotels, to cater to people who are going to stay 5 nights or longer consecutively, right? So people who are on training assignments, relocations, consulting, auditing, and it was a market segment I hadn't been exposed to. I did that for a couple of years. Then I get a phone call. I was in New York on a business trip, and I get a phone call from a guy who explained to me he's building a hotel. And he was building a hotel in the suburbs of Chicago. And he was describing this hotel to me, and there were some objections that I had to deal with as a salesperson, things that our hotel couldn't do. Well, he was building a hotel that could do all of those things that our hotel couldn't do. And I just heard him clicking off feature after feature, and he said, I'd love to talk to you about, somebody gave me your name, and we're looking for a director of sales. Are you interested? And I was very interested, and I was very excited. And so I went and I took this job with this company, and it ended up being a Homewood Suites hotel in the suburbs of Chicago, and there's about 500 of those hotels open today, and the one I opened up was number 5, and man, we had a good run there. We had a great run. The hotel was busy, people enjoyed coming there, it was a new concept, and you know, we generated a lot of revenue for the owners. And then one day, I get a memo from the parent company, who was based here in Memphis. At the time, it was a company called Promus Hotels, Promus, and which in Latin means to serve. And so I got a memo from them talking about some open positions, and one of them was a field marketing director's position. And I knew the guy who was the hiring manager because we had done some project work together at the Homewood. And I called him up and I said, hey, tell me more about this. It was a box that had TBD in it, to be determined. I said, tell me about this TBD box. And he said, well, if you can, we'd like to fly you to Memphis and talk about it. And so I did. That was on a Thursday. I flew to Memphis. And on Sunday of that week, we agreed on terms, and so I was moving to Memphis. So, I'm fortunate. I only had to move 3 or 4 times for the work that I did, but there's a lot of people who've moved a lot more. And I came to Memphis, and folks down here move slower than they do in Chicago, but I wasn't going to be in Memphis very much because I took a position as director of field marketing for Hampton Inns. And at the time, in 1994, there were about 430 Hampton Inns. There's over 2,100 today. And so for the next 4 or 5 years, I just traveled all over the country opening up Hampton Inns.